Women know what you want before you do. That moment when you think you're being subtle, when you believe you're playing it cool, when you imagine your intentions are hidden, she's already read your entire psychological playbook. She knows your desperation level, your sexual availability, your emotional neediness, and your psychological strength before you've even spoken. This isn't happening by accident. It's happening by evolutionary design. For millions of years, women's survival depended on their ability to rapidly assess male psychological states. The women who could instantly detect desperation, aggression, instability, or deception lived to reproduce. The women who couldn't became victims. This created a biological radar system so sophisticated that modern women can decode your entire psychological profile within seconds of meeting you. But here's what's devastating about this reality. Most men are broadcasting signals that instantly disqualify them from serious consideration. They're walking advertisements for their own psychological weaknesses, telegraphing their sexual desperation, emotional instability, and lack of inner purpose through energy patterns they don't even realize they're transmitting, and the primary destroyer of male psychological sovereignty, lust, not just sexual desire, but the desperate, hungry, validation-seeking energy that pornography, sexual scarcity, and emotional emptiness create in modern men. When a woman looks at you, she's not seeing what you think she's seeing. You might think she's evaluating your physical appearance, your fashion choices, or your social status indicators. In reality, she's performing an unconscious psychological assessment that operates below the level of conscious thought. She's sensing your energetic signature, the invisible broadcast of your internal psychological state. This signature contains information about your sexual desperation level, your emotional stability, your inner confidence, your life purpose, and most importantly, whether you need something from her to feel complete. The energetic signature isn't mystical nonsense. It's biological reality. Human beings communicate through micro-expressions, body language, vocal tonality, pheromone release, and electromagnetic fields generated by emotional states. Women have evolved exceptional sensitivity to these signals because their survival historically depended on accurate male assessment. This is why women often report getting a feeling about men that proves accurate despite contradicting surface appearances. They're not being irrational. They're accessing biological intelligence that operates faster and more accurately than conscious analysis. Here's the brutal truth. You can't fake energetic signatures. You can manipulate your appearance, rehearse conversation, topics, and learn pickup techniques. But you can't hide your internal psychological state from someone whose survival programming is designed to detect exactly that information. Modern men are walking around in a state of chronic sexual desperation that broadcasts weakness with the intensity of a radio transmitter. This desperation doesn't come from natural sexual desire. It comes from pornography addiction, sexual scarcity, and the psychological emptiness that drives men to seek validation through sexual conquest. The lust frequency is the energetic signature of a man who needs sexual validation to feel worthy. It's the psychological broadcast of someone whose self-esteem depends on female approval, whose identity revolves around sexual success, and whose emotional stability requires constant external validation. Women can detect this frequency instantly because it triggers their biological alarm systems. Throughout evolutionary history, sexually desperate men were dangerous. They were more likely to be sexually aggressive, emotionally unstable, and psychologically unreliable. Women developed sophisticated detection systems to identify and avoid these men. This is why the man who's trying hardest to get laid gets laid the least. His desperation creates energetic repulsion that overrides any physical attractiveness or social skills he might possess. The harder he tries, the more desperate he becomes. The more desperate he becomes, the more repulsive his energy signature becomes to women. The lust frequency manifests through subtle behavioral patterns that women unconsciously recognize. The quick glances at her body, the slightly longer eye contact than necessary, the energetic neediness that seeps through even practice conversation, the subtle positioning and posturing designed to impress her sexually. But here's where it gets even more insidious. Pornography doesn't just create sexual desperation. It programs men to view women as sexual objects rather than complete human beings. This objectification creates an energetic signature that women find deeply disturbing on a subconscious level. They can feel when a man is seeing them as a collection of body parts rather than a person. The pornography-conditioned man approaches women with an energy that says, "I want to use you for sexual gratification." This energy is impossible to hide because it colors every interaction, every glance, every word choice. Women develop an instinctive revulsion to this energy because it signals potential danger. While men are focused on physical attraction and sexual availability, women are primarily scanning for psychological stability. This isn't a conscious preference, it's biological programming designed to identify men capable of long-term protection and resource provision. Stability isn't about having money or status symbols. It's about having an internal psychological center that doesn't depend on external circumstances for its maintenance. It's the energy signature of a man who knows who he is, what he wants, and where he's going, regardless of what others think about it. The stable man doesn't need validation from women to feel worthy. He doesn't need sexual conquest to feel masculine. He doesn't need relationship success to feel complete. This psychological independence creates an energetic signature that women find irresistibly attractive because it signals genetic fitness and emotional reliability. Women unconsciously recognize stability through energetic cues that most men don't understand. The stable man moves through the world with quiet confidence that doesn't seek attention. He makes decisions without seeking approval. He maintains emotional equilibrium regardless of external pressure. He pursues his goals without being derailed by female attention or lack thereof. But here's the paradox that confuses most men. The less you need women's approval, the more they want to give it to you. The less you chase them, the more they pursue you. The less you invest emotionally in their responses, the more they become invested in earning your interest. This isn't manipulation or game playing. It's basic human psychology. People value what's scarce and dismiss what's abundant. When your attention and approval aren't freely available, they become psychologically valuable to women. The fastest way to destroy attraction is to need it. The moment a woman senses that you require her approval to feel good about yourself, her attraction mechanisms shut down completely. This happens unconsciously and instantaneously. She doesn't choose to lose attraction. Her biology makes the choice for her. Neediness broadcasts genetic weakness and emotional instability. Throughout evolutionary history, needy men were poor survival partners because their emotional dependence made them unreliable during crisis. Women developed attraction patterns that favor psychologically independent men who could maintain functionality regardless of external circumstances. The validation trap works by making women feel responsible for men's emotional states. When you need her approval to feel worthy, you're essentially asking her to manage your psychological well-being. This creates an energetic burden that women unconsciously resist because it signals that you lack the internal resources necessary for survival and protection. Neediness manifests through subtle energy patterns that women detect instantly. Seeking eye contact for approval after making jokes, monitoring her reactions to gauge your performance, adjusting your behavior based on her responses, showing disproportionate excitement when she shows interest, and demonstrating visible disappointment when she doesn't. These behaviors create an energetic signature that says, "I need something from you to feel complete." This neediness triggers biological disgust in women because it indicates psychological weakness and emotional instability. Women don't just sense your energy, they actively test it. The moment a woman detects potential weakness in your psychological armor, she'll unconsciously probe to determine the extent of your vulnerability. This isn't conscious manipulation. It's biological programming designed to assess male psychological fitness. These tests come in many forms: emotional outbursts to see if you'll prioritize her feelings over your boundaries, unreasonable demands to see if you'll sacrifice your principles for her approval, competitive behavior to see if you'll compromise your mission for her attention, and dramatic scenarios to see if you'll abandon your emotional center to manage hers. The man who fails these tests loses her respect permanently. The man who passes them earns her psychological investment and ongoing attraction. She doesn't consciously choose to respect boundary setting and lose attraction to boundary crossing. Her biology makes these choices for her. Most men fail these tests because they don't understand their purpose. They think women want them to be accommodating, agreeable, and emotionally available. In reality, women are testing whether you have the psychological strength to maintain your center when pressured to abandon it. The testing never stops because women need ongoing confirmation of male psychological fitness. A man who was strong yesterday might be weak today. A man who set boundaries in the past might compromise them under current pressure. The testing serves as a continuous psychological assessment system. But here's what most men don't understand. Passing these tests isn't about being mean or indifferent. It's about having such a clear sense of your own values and boundaries that you can maintain them with quiet confidence rather than aggressive defensiveness. In the modern attention economy, most men give their attention away freely to any woman who shows them basic acknowledgement. This abundance of male attention has created a psychological dynamic where female attention becomes scarce and therefore valuable, while male attention becomes common and therefore worthless. Women unconsciously understand this economic principle and use attention scarcity to maintain psychological leverage in interactions. They give just enough attention to keep men engaged while withholding enough to maintain their sense of value and control. The man who understands attention economics stops giving his attention away freely and starts treating it as a valuable resource that must be earned. This creates scarcity around his approval and validation, which makes women psychologically invested in earning it. Attention scarcity works because it triggers women's competitive programming. When something is difficult to obtain, women naturally want it more. When a man's attention isn't freely available, it becomes psychologically valuable to women in ways that abundant attention never can be. The scarcity principle operates ruthlessly in romantic dynamics because it mirrors the biological reality of reproductive competition. Throughout evolutionary history, the most genetically fit males had the most reproductive options, which made their attention scarce and valuable. Women developed attraction patterns that favor men whose attention is difficult to obtain. The most attractive energy signature a man can broadcast is complete absorption in a purpose larger than any individual woman. When a woman senses that you're genuinely focused on important goals that don't require her participation to achieve, she experiences attraction at the biological level. Mission-focused. Energy is attractive because it signals genetic fitness and survival capability. Throughout evolutionary history, men who could maintain focus on important tasks despite distractions were more likely to succeed in hunting, warfare, and resource acquisition. Women developed attraction patterns that favor men with this psychological profile. The man with genuine mission doesn't need women to validate his sense of purpose. He doesn't require relationship success to feel fulfilled. He doesn't abandon his goals when attractive women become available. This psychological independence creates an energetic signature that women find irresistibly attractive. But here's the crucial distinction. Your mission must be genuine, not manufactured for the purpose of attracting women. Women can sense the difference between authentic purpose and fake busyness designed to create attraction. Authentic mission creates genuine energy that women respond to. Fake mission creates triage, hard energy that women instinctively reject. Modern pornography doesn't just create sexual addiction, it fundamentally alters male psychology in ways that make authentic attraction impossible. The pornography-conditioned man approaches real women with psychological programming designed for digital fantasy rather than human connection. Pornography creates unrealistic expectations about female behavior, appearance, and sexual availability that poison men's ability to appreciate real women. The man whose breaking free sexuality has been shaped by digital fantasy finds real women disappointing because they don't conform to the artificial standards created by pornography. More importantly, pornography addiction creates chronic sexual desperation that women can sense immediately. The man who's constantly consuming sexual imagery approaches women with an energy of scarcity and neediness that triggers their biological alarm systems. Pornography also destroys the psychological tension necessary for authentic attraction. When a man has unlimited access to sexual imagery, real women lose their psychological power to create excitement and interest. The pornography user becomes psychologically numb to the subtle energetic exchanges that create genuine romantic tension. Breaking free from pornography addiction isn't just about sexual health, it's about restoring the psychological sensitivity necessary for authentic attraction. The sexual energy man who eliminates pornography from his life gradually recovers his ability to appreciate real women and to broadcast the kind of stable, confident energy that women find attractive. Sexual energy isn't just physical, it's psychological, emotional, and spiritual. When men constantly drain their sexual energy through pornography and masturbation, they're depleting the very force that creates attraction and confidence in real-world interactions. Sexual energy retention isn't about following arbitrary rules. It's about understanding that sexual energy is the foundation of male vitality, confidence, and psychological presence. The man who conserves his sexual energy naturally develops the kind of internal power that women can sense and respond to. Energy retention creates psychological benefits that extend far beyond sexual interactions. Retained sexual energy translates into increased confidence, improved focus, enhanced emotional stability, and greater sense of personal power. These psychological changes create an energetic signature that women find attractive. But retention alone isn't sufficient. The conserved energy must be directed toward meaningful goals and personal development. The man who retains sexual energy while remaining passive and purposeless won't experience the psychological benefits that create attraction. Not all women respond to male energy in the same way. Understanding the different psychological categories helps explain why certain approaches work with some women while failing completely with others. The majority of women, perhaps biological versus evolutionary 80 to 90%, operate primarily from evolutionary programming without much conscious awareness of their psychological patterns. These women respond predictably to displays of strength, confidence, and emotional unavailability. They're attracted to challenge and bored by predictability. A smaller percentage have developed some conscious awareness of their psychological patterns, but still operate primarily from biological programming. These women may recognize their attraction to unavailable men, but feel powerless to change their responses. A very small percentage, less than 1%, have developed sufficient consciousness to transcend their biological programming and choose partners based on compatibility rather than just attraction triggers. These women can appreciate stability without needing drama and challenge to maintain interest. Understanding these categories prevents you from taking female behavior personally. Most women aren't consciously choosing to be attracted to unavailable men or to lose interest in nice guys. Their biology is making these choices for them. Here's a counterintuitive truth that confuses many men. The stronger and more psychologically developed you become, the fewer obvious signals of interest you'll receive from women. This happens because psychological strength intimidates most women and makes them feel unable to use their usual manipulation tactics. Women who are accustomed to controlling men through emotional manipulation will unconsciously avoid men who appear immune to these tactics. They can sense when a man has sufficient inner strength to resist their control attempts, and they find this threatening rather than the intimidation factor attractive. The intimidation factor operates below conscious awareness. Most women don't consciously think, "This man is too strong for me to manipulate." Instead, they feel uncomfortable around psychologically strong men without understanding why, and they gravitate toward weaker men who make them feel more powerful and in control. Understanding the intimidation factor prevents you from mistaking lack of attention for lack of attractiveness. If you're developing genuine psychological strength and receiving fewer obvious signals of interest, this might indicate that you're on the right path rather than the wrong one. The most counterintuitive aspect of male-female dynamics is that wanting female attention guarantees you won't receive it. Women can sense when men need the validation paradox approval and validation, and this neediness creates instant energetic repulsion that overrides any other attractive qualities. The validation paradox works because needing approval broadcasts genetic weakness and emotional instability. Women don't consciously choose to be repelled by neediness. Their biology makes this choice for them. When they sense that a man requires their approval to feel good about himself, their attraction mechanisms shut down automatically. Breaking free from the validation paradox requires developing such complete internal fulfillment that female approval becomes irrelevant to your sense of self-worth. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to women. It means becoming so internally complete that their responses don't affect your psychological equilibrium. The man who truly doesn't need female validation naturally receives more of it because his energy signature broadcasts confidence and psychological independence. Women are attracted to these qualities because they signal genetic fitness and emotional reliability. Resistance. Less than 1% of women have developed sufficient psychological consciousness to appreciate authentic male strength without needing to test it constantly. These women can recognize genuine confidence and stability without requiring proof through manipulation resistance. The higher-level woman expresses appreciation for male psychological development through calm acknowledgement rather than dramatic testing. She doesn't need to create chaos to verify your strength because she can sense it directly through your energetic signature. However, seeking these women exclusively will likely lead to frustration because they're extremely rare. The practical approach is to develop authentic psychological strength while understanding that most women will respond to it through testing rather than immediate appreciation. If you're recognizing the truth in this analysis, if this explanation is revealing the hidden dynamics behind your romantic struggles, I encourage you to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your engagement helps ensure these conversations continue, that men start understanding the psychological forces that shape their relationships with women. Understanding female energy recognition is useless without practical application. The goal isn't to practical application manipulate these dynamics to get women, it's to develop authentic psychological strength that naturally creates the energetic signature women find attractive. The foundation is eliminating the behaviors that create weak, needy energy: pornography consumption, validation seeking, emotional neediness, mission abandonment, and boundary flexibility. These behaviors broadcast psychological weakness that repels quality women. The next step is developing practices that create strong, stable energy, meaningful goal pursuit, emotional self-regulation, physical fitness, intellectual development, and spiritual growth. These practices create internal fulfillment that makes external validation unnecessary. The final step is learning to maintain your psychological center regardless of female responses. Whether women show maintaining your psychological center interest or ignore you, whether they test your boundaries or appreciate your strength, your internal state remains constant because it doesn't depend on external circumstances. The man who achieves this level of psychological development naturally broadcasts the kind of stable, confident energy that women find irresistibly attractive. He doesn't need to learn pickup techniques or manipulation strategies because his authentic presence creates attraction automatically. The choice facing every man. The choice facing every man is simple but not easy. Continue broadcasting weak, needy energy while wondering why women aren't attracted to you, or do the inner work necessary to develop authentic psychological strength that naturally creates attraction. The choice is yours. Most men choose the first path because it requires no effort or personal responsibility. They blame women for being shallow or crazy while refusing to examine their own psychological weaknesses that create the rejection they experience. The minority of men who choose the second path discover that developing genuine inner strength is the most difficult and rewarding challenge they'll ever undertake. It requires eliminating comfortable habits, facing uncomfortable truths, and building new psychological patterns that create lasting change. But here's what makes the effort worthwhile. The psychological development that makes you attractive to quality women also makes you more effective in business, more reliable as a friend, more resilient during challenges, and more satisfied with life in general. The energetic signature of authentic strength doesn't just attract women, it attracts opportunities, friendships, and experiences that align with your highest potential. When you stop broadcasting weakness and start broadcasting strength, everything in your life begins to improve. Schopenhauer understood that most human suffering comes from wanting things we don't need and lacking the strength to obtain things we do need. The man who develops genuine psychological independence stops wanting validation he doesn't need and naturally attracts the respect and admiration he does deserve. The choice is yours. You can continue seeking external solutions to internal problems, or you can begin the inner work that creates authentic transformation. One path leads to continued frustration and disappointment. The other leads to genuine confidence and natural attraction. Choose wisely. Your psychological sovereignty depends on it.